there's been quite a number of questions coming in already, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for that. So we will go through some of those. Mel, I can see that hopefully there's been some grouping, so I'll let you ask the questions away. But obviously, if anyone does want to raise their hand and ask a question, then also please do so.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Communications at HESA and mainly in Data Futures for my sins. So I've grouped them generally into data and submission and support questions. So should we start? I think we'll start with the data.
Yeah, sure.
Is the specification for 22-23 fixed, or could it still change?
Yeah, I can take that one. So yeah, so the specification for 22-23 is now fixed. Appreciate obviously the OFS consultation on the burden review, also not necessarily the best timing of that one, but just to confirm that any outcomes of that will not affect 22-23. The earliest that will be with it will be for 23-24, and obviously that is very much dependent on what level of change comes out of that. But just to reassure you that we're not expecting, there are no major known changes for 22-23. Everything is kind of either known about, or it will be, if we do have to make changes, it will be as a result of if there is something absolutely majorly broken that we find within beta that we have to fix, or if there is like a major policy change that we have to react to. But obviously these will all still go through HESA's internal reporting sort of processes and how we kind of go through about kind of impact assessing those. So we're not anticipating there to be any changes from now on. It will more be updates to guidance, just to give you a bit more of the kind of, this is how support around how scenarios and those sorts of things.
Great. So with beta ended in August 2022,
sorry,
and then
sorry, Mal, I've just seen that Garrick has put his hand up. I don't know if that's a related point or not.
Yeah, it was just because you mentioned the OFS consultation, and again I saw someone saying yes, there's tons out at the moment, but they are all interlinked, so it's quite a sort of,
yes,
it's a good exercise to read them all at a sort of gulp, and you sort of think, well, okay, these aren't, you know, as we all know, don't we, these aren't really consultations, these are socializing the issue around what it is they're going to do and just looking out to see whether there are any howlers. Now in this specific sort of data futures context, obviously they had 4 options. One option was sort of as you were, but with 2 submissions, and that's their preferred option. So that's kind of where we, actually I thought that was the best option anyway, but that's kind of where we're going. But what I noticed in the consultation, and I just don't know whether you can speak to this or not, is that they clearly left the door open for future multiple in-year collections over and above the 2. And I think the tenor of the consultation was, we're going to go for option 1, 2 in-year collections, as a sense of that's probably the biggest bite we can get at this time. But actually, the first phase of this, you know, the first real returns that we do in 2023 will just be the sort of basis for them moving to more and more and more multiple returns. And I just think I just wanted to ask the question whether you had any sense about that, because I think it's important for us to understand it now. The specification right now might be fixed, but the underlying work I'm doing with other parts of the institution, you know, if I know that this whole thing is just really a sort of idling motor that's going to speed up and speed up and speed up, that's one message which I can get out there now quite adequately. If suddenly the engine kicks in from a standing start, and by surprise we're doing 10 returns a year, that's going to be a bit more difficult to manage. And I do think that from a sort of HESA OFS perspective, the fact that this has been going on since 2016 means a lot of people like me have sort of cried wolf, burnt resources, cashed in political favours, and so we are in a weaker position, I think, politically in our institutions to deliver what you might want than you may imagine that we are. That's a sort of ramble, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I completely take all the points there as well. I think obviously the timing of this is not great. There is lots of interlinking and parts that could kind of that have dependencies on each other, which is obviously very difficult to manage. We also know that obviously that this process has been going on for a long time, so we know that this is something that's been very difficult internally within providers to kind of keep that momentum, and appreciate that there was a lot of momentum the first time, and we've found that there's been a struggle to kind of reignite that in terms of the kind of OFS side of things, and actually keeping the door open for for multiple collections. We've wanted to do it in a way so that we have got the flexibility to do that if requirements change in future. But at the moment, we are not anticipating that they are going to jump from the sort of 2 or 3, obviously 3 that we've got in at the moment, but the proposal to go to 2, we're not expecting that it's going to be something that they will just change overnight to want to do a much more rapid data collection. But the way that it's been done at the moment is it gives us the opportunity to do that if there is then a requirement in future. So in sort of 5-10 years time, say, it means that we can do that much more quickly than obviously having to go through essentially this whole process again of data features.
That's really helpful. So thank you for that. I think the one thing I would say is if there were any way, and I appreciate you're probably more a technical team, but if there was any way you could engineer a communication to the likes of vice chancellors, chief resources officers and all the rest of it, and say something along the lines of, we know your sort of data community have been talking about this for a long time. Make it clear that the project has been delayed, but make it clear that it is real and it is here and it is now. And I know that messages go to the Vice Chancellor about this. I've had 1 or 2, they just get passed through to me without him reading them, frankly, because he's sort of bored of data futures. So I think there just needs to be some reigniting of the urgency with senior managers just to help us politically deliver what you want. And I don't know how you would do that, but it was just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. We've actually been having, it's actually been a topic we've been talking about internally this week about how we can kind of continue to get that message out there. So yeah, we can certainly take that one on board and try and see what else we can do in that space.
Brilliant, thanks.
I'm just going to move us back. Sorry, Mal, let's go back onto some of the sort of data questions. Mohammed, I can see that you've put your hand up. I know, I'm conscious that obviously we're here mainly to talk about sort of beta side rather than the kind of OFS consultation. So Mohammed, if you want to ask a question.
Just a very quick question, as Gary said, we are going to participate in Data Future, the beta, and then in August onward we'll be starting submitting the data for a student alternative. So that will be the parallel process, right, for us as a provider.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's just a quick question for me.
Perfect. Thank you.
Which is actually, Mohammed, the next question, I think. With beta ending August 2022 and the new HDP opening 2023, how can we validate our data in that period? Early validation is going to be critical in this first year.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's covered, isn't it?
Yeah, so just to say on that one is obviously, as Jackie mentioned earlier, we will have in our phase 2 release of beta, we will have the OVT, so the online validation toolkit. So at the moment, obviously, we give you a offline version, but we're actually, as part of data features, moving to an online validation toolkit, which give you a much richer kind of engagement with kind of quality rules as a first pass than you get currently with the offline tool. So this will be available from our second release, which is around kind of May time. That will be also available to all providers. That won't just be available just to beta participants, but again, that means that you can then start actually, appreciate not necessarily in May you will have all the details, but it means that you can kind of get yourself familiar with it, and then once August comes around, as you've got then a platform that you can then start doing that before the full HDP opens in early 2023.
Great, thank you. So some of these questions I think I'm going to combine because they're questions about creating that submission.
Mm-hmm.
So people asking if there's an upper or lower limit on file size, and if they're required to send a full file, or whether they have that autonomy.
Yeah, so absolutely, you do have that autonomy. Obviously, we would love to encourage that everyone's in a position that they can send big files through, but we know that that is not necessarily a realistic expectation for everybody. So we very much, as Helen mentioned earlier, we were kind of expecting it to be a bit of a slow burn. So there is no kind of real kind of, well, if you put 5 students through, then you failed beta. Not at all. It's going to be a case of what you think you can do and what is going to help you in your kind of readiness for the go live for 22-23. So we haven't got any upper or lower limits in terms of size. You don't necessarily have to do kind of full cohorts of students. I saw there was a question around actually if you've got 800 students, if you did 100, would that be like, absolutely, that would be absolutely fine. It's still testing your understanding, it's testing your engagement with the system. So obviously that gives it, if we can start, we want to get a range of files because obviously we have a range of provision. I think one of the things that across the sector, we want to try and keep this as kind of make sure that we've, where possible, tested at every scenario. So whether that's a provider with lots of students or a provider with not many. obviously we want to kind of get that full breadth if we can, but appreciating obviously it is a massive amount of work that's obviously combined with all of the other your kind of day-to-day jobs, so it's kind of best endeavors. Obviously if you are able to put real data through, then that's fantastic, but if again you don't feel comfortable doing so yet, and you want to put test files through, or you want to anonymize them, that again is absolutely fine. We can do that. I think the one thing that I will kind of put around that is that in some of the work around the increased validation that we'll be doing around once we've done the migrated data work, so migrating previous year's data into the data futures world, we are going to be doing obviously more sort of validation across them to make sure that obviously continuing students look about right. Is some of that will look a bit different, because obviously if you haven't got a full cohort, you're going to kind of trip up on some of those, but again, that's something we can certainly manage, and it doesn't mean that any engagement that you can have is absolutely anything you can do would be great.
Great. In the Data Futures web page, it would be great to have some sample data files, just like we have in. I want to check that the essay section. I'm not sure what essay is.
I'm going to assume
Student
student
alternative.
alternative.
Me too, but I didn't
Yeah.
want to jump too far forward.
Yeah, so yeah, this is something that we've been talking about a lot internally about do we, don't we? So we have got test files obviously that we use ourselves, so we can certainly have a look at being able to potentially provide some of those, just at least in the sort of early stages of testing. I suppose one of the things that we wouldn't want you to necessarily fully rely on that all the time. Obviously that doesn't necessarily sort of prove to that, obviously it shows that you can actually upload files, but actually in terms of kind of fully kind of getting involved in sort of your understanding around the system, I think one of the things we have found so far is actually being able to kind of create your own files has really kind of helped cement actually understanding and actually what the process is and any changes that you may need to make. But yeah, we can certainly look at that and how we can look to share some of those.
Great. I'm going to move on to some support questions, and I'm going to answer a couple, so then we can move on to the other questions.
Yeah, perfect.
And one is about the training sessions, and only 2 places per provider. And the response from our training team is we've limited those spaces to 2 delegates per provider, so we can ensure every provider is able to send colleagues. If 3 working days before a date there are still spaces, more colleagues can book on that date. So I hope that's helpful. Then that have record contact forms been sent to providers already, or should we await these from Liaison? And these have been sent out when the agreement has been signed. So do let Liaison know if it hasn't been signed. It's been sent to the accountable officer or head of provider, CCing in the operational contact at each provider. So that's the ones I have answers for. The questions now are, will all providers get access to all of the support materials? I can answer this one on the beta web page. Yes, it's a public page. So that page is for any provider can go into it, as well as the beta participants. But if we had, as we said before, a very specific beta strategic communication, such as downtime on the system or a bug that was going to say, stop you doing something, we would send out a communication to the beta colleagues. But generally you'll be able to look in the HESA weekly update, and we'll make sure that there is a beta section within the data futures section, so it's really clear to you as well. Now there's a couple of questions about Liaison, and they are that has Liaison capacity been expanded to deal with the additional questions, and then will there be a separate email channel through Liaison for beta?
Yep, I can certainly answer that one. So in terms of the capacity within Liaison, actually, yes, we have specifically as part of data features, we've added a couple of extra roles. They've been in place for quite a while, actually, just so that obviously there's quite a big learning curve, as you all will be aware of obviously having to kind of be in a position that you've kind of having to learn a whole new language from data features. So we have really increased our capacity there within Liaison. In terms of dealing with having sort of a separate kind of channel, we want to keep that through the sort of Liaison mailbox, just so that actually it means that we have all of the right processes in place internally. So obviously this is also a dry run for us to make sure that we have all the right capacity and skill sets that we need to be able to support this when this becomes business as usual for us. So we are not looking at separating that out. It will be going through just the usual Liaison channel. And Peter, I just saw your comment come in. Thank you very much. Yes, Liaison are fantastic, and they were great during Alpha. So big thumbs up for our colleagues that are on the call at the moment.
Great. And these other ones are more, I would say, feedback than
Yeah,
direct questions with an answer, but that it'd be great to create a collaborative environment for all providers where we can ask questions and share our stories, and also to kind of come back to something Garrett has raised and others have, that in the depths of readiness preparation, and there's still areas up for consultation, so that struggle to secure buy-in from colleagues, which I think feeds into that collaborative environment as well.
Yeah, this is something that we did during Alpha, and we know that during Alpha, obviously, it was a really, really useful tool because it was much more kind of handheld kind of experience through, where we had very specific scenarios that we wanted to kind of to make sure that we'd hit and that we'd understood properly. Having obviously, it's a little bit more difficult to do that when there is obviously when there's 14 providers, we can do that. When there's at the moment we're over 130, that's obviously very different, but certainly something we can explore in kind of how we do that, because I suppose one of the things we have and ahed about is using sort of kind of like a Teams channel, which is what we used in Alpha, but it becomes very difficult for us to manage in another place kind of questions and queries, but certainly something that we'll go away and have another think about and another look and see if there is a way of us doing that.
Great. Some more questions popping in now about some additional online training sessions, if they're going to be available, and will there be any sessions specifically aimed at workers that are not directly involved in return compilation, something simple?
So we've got an e-learning one as a kind of general kind of this is data features kind of overview. We haven't necessarily looked at yet about doing a sort of more general one for kind of non-data people and those that are kind of really in the thick of things, but certainly something we can look at. That's kind of why we like to have these sessions, really, so that we can kind of gather that feedback of saying what is it that's going to help you. So certainly I saw there was a couple of other comments in about whether there's potentially something around a presentation. There's certainly lots that we can look at there to try and help you, so we'll take that one back and see what we can provide for you.
Right, and I think there's a couple more there. What's great is this is opening up that dialogue, so it's great for us that it's bringing up more questions as well and helping us to enrich it for you. How many providers have signed up to beta?
Helen, do you know the number off the top of your head?
So as of yesterday, it was 132 so far, which we hope will possibly still creep up a bit more as well over the next few weeks. But we're really pleased with the response so far.
Yeah, we've all been getting very excited, well, at least some of us, myself being one of them, been getting very excited when I think within the first week we had about 40, and I was just, I thought it was fantastic. So yeah, we really, really do appreciate the sort of time and effort you're taking to kind of actually put yourselves forward for this. So yeah, we've been absolutely thrilled with the response so far.
Great. And then a question about software suppliers and our expectations.
Yes, so one of the expectations we'd had with software suppliers is that we wanted them to have them all ideally ready and have platform software available to any of their customers for the start of beta, so from February. We have spoken to all of the kind of the third-party suppliers that supply other people. We are aware of, I think the majority are there or thereabouts, or are expecting that they will be by kind of March time and have something available for yourselves to be able to start engaging with. We are aware of 2 that are not in that position. We are speaking with them separately to kind of work out exactly kind of what impact that does have for those that have signed up to beta, because I appreciate it means that their experience is not necessarily as rich as it could be. So we will be in contact with those individuals separately where we know there are potentially concerns. But essentially what we're saying is that most of the software suppliers have got a platform that can be used by yourselves to do kind of data captures, and those that aren't. So hopefully that will give you, hopefully you can then obviously reach out to them, for those of you that have got suppliers, and speak to them and say, yeah, this is what we need, because obviously they all have slightly different requirements of what software needs to be downloaded in what order and those sorts of things.
Great. One more support one, I suppose, to build back on that collaborative environment, that are we going to have any drop-in sessions similar to Alpha?
So again, this is another one we have wrestled with, because actually I know that during Alpha we got lots of praise from our drop-in sessions. So something we did do was that on a weekly and then went to fortnightly, we kind of got an opportunity to kind of come together and kind of have conversations. So just to say, this is what we've been working on. These are things that we found difficult. We would love to be able to do that if we can, but appreciate obviously when there is a lot more of you, that becomes very difficult because it becomes a bit unmanageable. And obviously we don't have all the capacity in the world to be able to do that. We would love to be able to if we could. So one of the things that we are looking at is doing potentially more sessions like this towards the end of the releases. So again, we can do a bit of all these are things that we found difficult. So certainly something that we are looking at. But if anyone does have any kind of thought that it can sometimes be quite difficult when you've got a group of sort of 50 for everyone to be able to kind of equally get a sort of share of kind of information, but we can certainly take that one away again and see if there's another way we can be a bit more creative about how we can kind of get that kind of network and sharing around.
Great. There's back to, I suppose this goes back now to a data question.
Yeah, sure.
But are there any plans to provide one downloadable Excel file containing each entity with the field name, field length, etc., to correct the correct database tables that match your model? So sorry, trying to read something so I do not fully understand clearly makes me stumble.
I will admit I'm not sure. I think we must have, it's something that we must have already internally. So again, something that because we'll have used all of that information. So yeah, let us take that one away and see what we can do, because I assume that's the sort of feels similar to the sort of test data file question. So yeah, let's take that one away and see what we can do there.
Great. And I think other than asking us who the suppliers are, which clearly we're not going to get into.
It's not necessarily something that I'm able to say at this stage, but we'll be in contact with the individuals to let them know.
Sorry, just having a little scroll, and I think that's yes, sorry, what is provided by the software supplier and tables are available, but we need to write our own scripts to move data from production to DF tables. I think that feeds back into the Excel table, but not sure.
Yes, I think it will do. So again, speaking to the suppliers, they've got a different approach. Some are doing it for them, some are not, and even some with different products are doing different approaches for different products. So again, you'll need to kind of check with your supplier to sort of say this is what they are doing or not, to work out whether you'll have to do that yourselves or whether they are providing some of that for you. And
Helen Miles has just very generously offered to share once complete. So this may be for some of you an opportunity to collaborate.
Oh, that's really appreciate that. Thank you. So we've still got sort of 5 more minutes left. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions that have come in on the chat, or if anyone has got any other questions that they want to raise or anything else they want to ask. And I found all the questions and comments so far have been really helpful, so thank you very much. Jim.
Hi, could I just ask for clarification? You said you'd be in contact with individuals. Were you talking about being in contact with the individual software houses who are problematic, or the providers using those software houses?
It will actually be both. So anyone that's signed up to beta and said that they are that their software supplier is someone that we've been told by the software supplier that they are not where we would like them to be, we will be in contact with the individuals at the providers to let them know that that is the case.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Fiona.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about data validation that the live system would be open early 2023 and we'd be able to use the beta system for the online validation. Does that mean the beta system won't close until the live system opens?
So what we're actually doing is that we will have essentially a beta version of the online validation toolkit that will come out in May. We will then we'll be looking to do a full production version of that. Once we've got a full production version of the online validation tool, that would be the stage that we would then close beta. So there would at no point we would expect there to be any kind of drop. We would always where possible try and make sure that there is something available to you to be able to engage with before the full system is open in early 23.
Lovely, thank you.
Anything else from anybody that wants to raise or ask? Was anything else come in the? I don't think I've seen any other questions coming in.
Not so far, but we're having some great collaboration and offers of collaboration between providers. Oh, here we go. Sorry, Garrick popped in. Do you and Hisa know who on beta is using what system? So yeah, actually there's some sharing now in who is using what system with each other. And I would say this is a great opportunity for you to collaborate with each other if you can. I'm not sure we would go as far as listing a provider, each provider's software provider.
Yeah, so we know because it was in our sign-off form. So again, it was something that we could do. Obviously, if you're happy to share now with the group who you're with, again, it's not necessarily our place to be able to kind of say who is using what systems, but that is something obviously internally within HISA we know. I know a lot of the suppliers do have their own sort of user groups, so again it would be one to kind of contact them. Again, obviously, once we've also got the list on the website of all the beta participants, again, hopefully we'll be able to do a bit of a cross-matching. Appreciate, obviously, that's not necessarily us doing all the matching for you, but hopefully that will then enable you to get the information that you need.
I just think there's a moment in time, which is probably 2 minutes long, which is that we're all saying we'll collaborate, and then it's really difficult when you leave a meeting to work out how you're going to trigger that collaboration. And yes, there's a 6 users group and all the rest of it, but it focuses on other things. So I have just banged I'll regret this, I have just banged my email into the chat. I'm Garrick Fincham, I'm g.fincham@uea.ac.uk. And if I just volunteer for anybody who wants to try and get some collaboration around this on the beta pilot who's using SITs, just to fling me an email, and I'm happy to coordinate that.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I can see there's a couple of other people that have put their email addresses in. So yeah, just thank you. I was sort of hoping one of the sort of sessions like this is that we can try and I know it's not always the same when you can have a sort of go and do that networking when you're at a sort of face-to-face event, but really appreciate everyone sort of wanting to help each other. It's really lovely to see. Fiona, you've still got your hand up. Is that from last time, or have you got another question?
No, sorry, it's from last time.
No, that's fine. Alexandra.
So it's just a quick one, because I saw a number of other in-house systems, and that we do in the other team, the external software suppliers and in-house providers, there is that team, and we have our own channel on that. So I don't know if that's a way. I don't know if some people who are in this group aren't in that team and channel, and if that's a way for us to collaborate.
Yeah, that's a very good one to raise. So yeah, for those of you that are a provider that's got their own in-house system, we do have a software supplier and in-house provider Teams channel. It's something that we've had for a number of years now, where again we have more regular conversations on a much more technical level. So if there is anybody on this call that is not aware whether you or your colleagues are involved in that, please do get in contact, and we can make sure we can sort access out for you on those ones. Lovely. I can see there's a few people that have had to go, because I appreciate we are at time now. But again, obviously have a think if there's any other questions that you kind of come up with, obviously once you've had a chance to kind of digest all the information that we've shared with you today, please do feel free to get in contact with Liaison or any of the HISA colleagues that are on the call as well today. And yeah, we just really appreciate your time today and all the really good questions and feedback so far. And we look forward to formally welcoming you onto beta, and yeah, we hope it all goes well for you, and we've got all the right sort of support channels available to you, and we're always here if we can help in any way. Lovely. Thank you very much all, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.